Hello everyone, Nasa here with ActionVFX. In this video, I'm going to show you a breakdown on how I turned this shot of miniature Millennium Falcon into this snowy planet scene using VFX Compositing. This is not going to be a fully detailed tutorial. I'm just going to show you my general workflow for this particular project. And of course, this shot involves ActionVFX stock footage collections such as Atmospheric Smoke and Fog Volume 1 and 2, our free snow assets, and several others to create the snowy atmosphere effects on this shot. Link to these assets on the description below. Before we move forward with the video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification icon so you will not miss out on more contents like this one. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first, let's break down the major steps that I did to achieve this shot. First, of course, I shot a footage of this miniature Millennium Falcon in front of a green screen. And of course, special thanks to my friend GriyaKolektor for allowing me to borrow his Millennium Falcon to use in this shot. He makes a bunch of really cool toy photography on his Instagram, so check him out. And after I had the footage, I did some 3D tracking and then built the CG environment in a 3D program, and then composite the ship on top of that environment. And then using ActionVFX footage collection, I added some weather effects and other elements to really push the scene to the next level. So before shooting anything, it is important to know what the final shot is going to look like, so you can prepare accordingly. For example, I wanted to do an outdoor scene of the Falcon in a snowy planet. So that means I'm going to shoot this outdoor with a real sunlight, so I can get a natural sunlight directly from the source. And then because I want to remove the background, that means I'm going to need a green screen. And then for the ground that the Falcon is sitting on, luckily we had this white table that we can use. So that means the ground kind of already looked like a snow terrain, and that helps a lot with getting the correct light bounce on the ground to the Falcon. And this will also help for extracting the shadow later in visual effects. Now for the shooting itself, you want to shoot your miniature with a wide lens. Like here, I'm shooting on a 15mm focal length because the camera is way bigger compared to the Falcon, so we want to compensate it by stretching the distance of your scene to make your miniature look gigantic. And then you also want to shoot it from a lower angle to really sell that the miniature is towering over you. And then you want to shoot with a smaller aperture or higher aperture number. That way we have more things in focus and not getting a shallow tilt shift effect that can make the subject look microscopic. And then you also want to increase the shutter speed so you don't get a lot of motion blur. And then you want to record in a high frame rate as well. The reason for this is because we are shooting a small object, and any small camera shake or jitter that we made when we are shooting will be magnified. And that large and fast movement is what can make the object seem small. So we want to make sure to have a very subtle move. And thus, with high shutter speed and high frame rate, we can slow down the footage to make any sudden movement or shakiness less obvious. And to reduce the shakiness a little bit more, I used this small DIY slider that I bought so I can get a smooth dolly move on my shot instead of just doing it handheld. Now, one thing that I noticed is that these camera settings are going to make your scene really dark. So you're going to need a bunch of light. That's why I decided to shoot this outdoor with real sunlight so I don't have to set up a bunch of lights during the shoot. Now, after we got the shot, we're gonna go to the fun part, which is the visual effects. So the first thing I did for this shot is I slowed this down a little bit. Because like I said, any small movement is magnified, including the dolly in movement. And once that's done, I rendered it out and use it for VFX compositing. For this, I'm using Nuke to do the compositing. And of course, you can do this in any other VFX compositing programs. So the first thing we want to do is to 3D camera track the scene. In my project in Nuke, I decided to do a manual 3D track of my shot, so I can get more control of the result. I have a Nuke tutorial dedicated for this, which you can check out in the description below. Also in Nuke, I can fill in my camera properties into the camera tracker node. So I can just type in the lens that I shot this with and then the film back of the camera that I used. This is going to help us a lot on getting a more accurate tracking result. Once I have done tracking, we have the 3D camera scene. So now you can export the camera tracking data to be used in 3D software. But before we go to 3D, I want to isolate the Falcon from the scene. Originally, I tried to do a green screen key because I have the green screen there. But then I realized the camera movement is actually very simple. So it's not going to be hard to just do manual rotoscoping of the Falcon instead of keying. So that's what I did. I isolated the Falcon using rotoscope. So now the 3D environment. For the 3D software, I am using Unreal Engine. Now of course you can use any software, this is just my preference. So in Unreal, we want to build a new sequence and a camera, and then import the camera tracking data that we have to the sequence. And then we can start building our environment. I am using several 3D models and material shader assets from Quixel.com, as well as others from CG Trader to help me create this snowy mountain environment. You can check out the 3D assets that I used on the description below. One trick to make your live action plate really look like it's stuck inside of your 3D world is to add an object in front of your plate. Like this rock here that I put on the foreground. This creates an impression that your live action plate is in the middle of the scene and not just on top of it. And then for the lighting, I'm using this snow HDRI from Polyheaven that matches with the lighting of my plate. One of the benefits of using Unreal and Nuke is we can use the UnrealReader Node to have a direct live link between the 3D scene building and Nuke. So that way I can do rough compositing in Nuke to make sure that the 3D scene that I'm building is correct. And once that's done, I rendered out the 3D environment using the UnrealReader Node. If you want to know more about this part, you can check out my tutorial on UnrealReader Node in the description below. So for the plate, I actually rendered out two backgrounds. One with the foreground rock, and the other is just a plain clean plate without the foreground rock. And you will find the reason why. So first, on the plain background, I added a sky from the HDRI plate that I used earlier, and then added in some atmospheric depth, and then before adding our Falcon, I added the shadow. And how I got the shadow is very simple. Because we already have the white ground on the plate, we can just use luminance keying to generate an alpha matte that we can use to create a shadow. So now we have an accurate shadow based on the plate. And then we want to put in our Falcon on top of the shadow. Next, I used the background render that has the foreground rock, and then using Cryptomatte, I isolated the rock and put it on top of the scene. So the reason why I have the foreground rock as a separate layer is because I want to add some depth of field or defocus on the foreground rock. And if I add a bunch of blurriness on the rock, that means some of the stuff on the background would be visible. So I need that clean plate of the background. Okay, so after a few color correction, I added some atmosphere, and this is what we have. So, because this is a snowy planet, I wanted the Falcon to have some snow building on top of it. To do that, I used this cool and simple trick where, by using a keyer node, I isolated the highlight areas of the plate, and then composite only those bright areas on top. This creates an impression that there is some white snow building on top of our Falcon. And then it's time to add some ActionVFX elements. I slapped in some of our ice and frost elements to the Falcon to create a frosting textures on the ship. To make it look like the assets is sitting on the surface of the Falcon, I used some projection mapping. So in Nuke, we could generate a rough 3D mesh of our scene using the point cloud generator. And once I have the 3D mesh, I would then just project my ice and frost elements to it. That way, they would stick and follow the curvature of the ship. And then using the luminance key again, I was able to break up the frosting textures based on the little details of the ship. So it doesn't look like just a flat layer sitting on top of the Falcon. And then I also added some snow texture from our free snow texture collection on top of the ship as well. And then after that, I wanted some windy snow effects that is buffeting on top of the ship. So I just added the side fog from atmospheric smoke and fog, as well as these steam jet assets, and scattered them around the ship. And then for the atmospheric look of the environment, I used atmospheric smoke and fog to populate the scene. And then I also added some snowfall from our windy snow collection, and then using the free snow effects, I added one that is close to the camera. And then reframed the shot a bit, and that was how I composite this miniature shot into a snowy environment. And of course, there was a brief overview of this VFX shot. So if you have any questions, let us know in the comment section below. And also, if you want to purchase the assets that I used in this tutorial, you can check out our website at ActionVFX.com. At ActionVFX, we provide high-quality VFX assets for your VFX needs. We have fire, explosions, energy, and many others. You can also sign up for our ActionVFX subscription starting at the low cost of $14.99 a month. This is the most affordable way to access our library, and you can cancel anytime, no contract. Thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to drop a like, and let us know in the comment section below what you thought of this video, or if you have other tutorial ideas that you would like us to cover. Most of all, be sure to subscribe. We are aiming for 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And also, there are a ton of other resources on our channel, such as tutorials, podcasts, VFX breakdowns, and so much more that we think you'll find valuable. This can be your home for visual effects content. So, see you next time. Bye-bye.